Game 1 really taught us what we needed to know, and that is NIP are the world champions for a reason, but there's still 3 more games of action ahead of us tonight. The next one is going to be just as interesting. It is Black Dragons versus Team 1. Now, Gio, we spoke a little bit in the break about Black Dragons and how they made a couple roster changes. What do you think about the roster changes, first of all, and do you think that's going to affect their playstyle? What do you think needs to change from the first stage?
Yeah, I mean, Black Dragons, they removed Hugsword and Yuna. They brought in Perez and Resets. So Resets was from their academy. Perez came from Supernova, which was not only a team that beat them in the Copa do Brasil, but also went on to win the entire thing. So a lot of promise there. The problem the Black Dragons had last stage was their over-aggression. It was relentless. And against certain teams, especially those below them in the standings, it would work incredibly well. But against teams that were better than them, it was incredibly one-dimensional. So I need to see them flesh that out. Use the aggression that they know they can play well, but also bring some more strategy in behind it and ability to adapt, have contingency plans, because that's what they seriously lacked.
Ollie, adapting is such a huge thing, especially when you get to this level, because teams are able to look back, they're able to review you. You know, we speak about Black Dragons needing to make changes and adjust, but how do you think Team 1 are going to be able to adapt going into Stage 2?
I think
Sorry, Santos.
Santos, no worries. Black Dragon Santos, obviously, Santos, a team that we really did see struggle back inside of Stage 1, and changes were needed, changes were made. So it's a chance for them to come out and to show us what they've been able to work on inside of the sort of off-season, as it were. Obviously, a team that didn't make it into SI, but a team that did compete in the Copa do Brasil. So they have had a little bit of competitive experience outside of Stage 1 of BR6 as well. They didn't do all too great inside of the Copa do Brasil, though. So it really is about showing how much work they've been able to put in that off-season and what they're able to bring us now.
Well, let's take a look at what kind of work they put in Stage 1 and in the break between. Let's take a quick look and see what we should expect in game number 2.
Black Dragons have spent the off-season revitalizing their roster and come into Stage 2 renewed and hungry. However, even with the exit of Hugsword and Yuna and the arrival of Perez and Resets, it remains to be seen whether or not these changes are for the better. The first stage was difficult for the Dragons, who found themselves 7th overall in the Stage 1 standings, as well as being eliminated in the quarterfinals of the Copa do Brasil by non-BR6 team Supernova. However, it was from this non-BR6 team, who actually went on to win the Copa do Brasil, that the Dragons found their new signing of Perez, who was actually the MVP of that entire tournament.
A gente sempre pensou num projeto a longo prazo. Mas só que, infelizmente, algumas mudanças a gente teve que fazer no caminho. Algumas a gente não queria também, né? Algumas saídas. Mas a gente focou em conseguir uma line que a gente consiga ter muito mais tempo de trabalho e focar nela para que os resultados venham de vez.
Santos decided against making any lineup changes in the off-season, but the team didn't have much to celebrate after finishing second to last in the first stage of BR6, and like their opponents, also falling in the quarterfinals of the Copa do Brasil to a non-BR6 team in Stella.
Na Copa do Brasil a gente começou bem contra o time do Amigos do Shape, a gente conseguiu jogar o nosso jogo, só que no próximo jogo a gente não conseguiu entrar, a gente acordou desligado, a gente ficou parado, moscando, e os caras criaram muito por cima da gente, jogaram muito bem todos, eles fizeram counter tático em cima da gente, em vários mapas, e os caras conseguiram levar muito fácil.
Both teams have struggled so far in terms of results, but when it comes to competition between the two, Santos comes out ahead, having handedly defeated the Dragons 7-2 within the first stage. However, this is a new Dragons who are looking to forget the pains of the past and make a statement with their new roster.
Hoje contra o Santos, acho que jogo mais cauteloso assim é o ideal.
O jogo de hoje contra a BD vai ser jogo pegado, bastante trocação e round rápido praticamente.
Which of the two teams will be able to start off the season strong with a victory, and which will be falling back into Stage 1 woes? Find out next in Santos Esports vs Black Dragons.
Well, Well, here it is. Game number 2 is about to get underway. I know that you guys are as excited as I am. Taking a look over at that video right there, you could tell that Black Dragons, they are ready to fight. They are saying, bring it on. But Santos not phased in the slightest. I got to ask you, though, Ollie, first of all, should either of these teams be phased? How evenly do you think they're going to match up right here?
I think it all depends on what's gone on inside of that off season in terms of where we saw these two teams and how they've faced off against each other in the past. I think it's going to be one for Black Dragons to try and sort of cement and take home. I think they probably move into this one as the favourites, and Santos maybe have that little bit more work to try and put out there and to prove.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Santos is they haven't made changes to their roster, but they did have some glaring holes in their playstyle back in stage 1. So great, you've decided to develop your roster further rather than making changes. Awesome, but you're going to have to prove in the server that you have focused on the right things.
Yep, there's a lot of things to focus on, but I think we should draw our focus right now over to the map vetoes. And I asked Gio first last time, so Ollie, it's your turn. Where are we ended up tonight?
Am I allowed to say Oregon as well? And then we can just sort of keep this as a train that continues on through. At some point, one of us will be right. Jokes aside, I think that this is going to be favoured toward a more sort of checklist map. You're going to be looking at an Oregon. You're going to be looking at a Clubhouse.
Well, yep.
Oh, no, go on. I mean, I was going to say Oregon would work for both of the teams, but that's going to be the first one to be banned out. Maybe Clubhouse? I mean, what is even still left? Yeah, Clubhouse and Kafe are the last two. So I guess it's going to Kafe Dostoyevsky.
Yep, Kafe, an interesting map to say the least. Are you favoring any specific teams here, Gio?
Black Dragons, because Santos are not that great at vertical play.
Well, that's one way to put it. Let's take a look, though, because game number 2 is now underway. Let's hop in and see which team is going to come out on top.
Thank you very much, Chunks. We are going to jump now into game number 2, Black Dragons versus Santos. Now going to be headed over toward Kafe. Let's see what these two have in store.
Starting with spicy bans. I know you guys can't see just yet, but we've had a Flores ban already, lads. Game number 2 here in stage 2 of the BR6, and he is already gone.
This was one of our concerns, and I think Flores, you think about the kit that they bring, you think about what they're able to provide in terms of not only information, but obviously removing pieces of utility, because that is what the drones are targeted toward. You think about Pixel Spot, notorious as a defender sort of power position, a defender play that they're going to try and make, where they're going to hold on to Pixel, lock off the entirety of Piano, and really cause some problems. Couple of drones that get thrown in, whether it be from, you know, South Rappel, or whether it be from inside, you know, down New Hatch, down Red Hatch, wherever it might be. There's a lot of places that you can get to that pixel spot in with very short distance traveled. That will be perfect for something like Flores' drone, and being able to remove those shields and that utility, it's going to be quite key. So no real surprise to me to see that banned. The interesting thing that this does do, though, is it frees things up, because if we're going to be now dealing with a lot of Flores bans, it then opens the gate for things like your Maverick or your Thatcher to make it on through.
And I'm very interested to see how this is going to play out here on Kitchen, which is the first site they've decided to come to. I mean, for example, when you have drone holes like the one over in Freezer, you can just send one of those drones straight on in. And if there isn't someone directly watching that part of the map, you can get away with removing all sorts of utility. So it's going to, I think, influence the spread of where the defenders have to be, where they have to watch, what they have to be looking out for. I mean, obviously not going to be in play for this one, but it's just the influence that it could have changes that so much. So maybe in a way, Black Dragons will be kind of grateful that that's been removed. I don't know. I mean, Santos are starting off on attack, and it was them who banned Flores, so I guess they could have kept him in to favor their attack, but I suppose they've decided that the second half is way too risky.
Attacking itself on Kafe can be quite risky business. It's never as sort of clear cut. It can be a very difficult map to approach on into, and especially with some of the lengthy clears that you have to do in particular. You know, even when you're dealing with Kitchen, you're going to want to try and have some presence on that top floor, and we can already see that with drones working on ahead and clearing out that top floor, and Nomad being brought. Destiny getting himself into an opening engagement as There are players on the side of Black Dragons on this top floor and occupying. Mainly Rez and Proxy is going to be playing pretty tight on those white stairs. Nade kill, though, to open things up.
What happens when you don't bring a Jaeger or a Romai? If you don't have anything that's going to prevent projectiles coming in and punishing you, then you might just get punished by the projectiles. These Black Dragons weakened so far. Destiny very close. One of these players, he's not going to overstep his boundaries. One of the things that I said about Santos at the start is they have historically had very poor vertical play. On a map with 3 floors like Kafe Dostoevsky, that can certainly come and hurt you, and it did back in stage 1, and I want to see if that's going to continue to be a problem. That air jab is going to deter the push down the white stairs, but for the most part of the attack, these holes still being open. The vertical pressure is still happening, and that's certainly nice to see.
It is a requirement here, especially when attacking onto bakery and kitchen. You're going to want to try and get yourself in and to work that vertical. Freeze has been reinforced and electrified, which is certainly one way of doing it. Another way is to leave that wall soft and then place somebody inside of Christmas or VIP. And while Black Dragons have got people in that vicinity, reinforcing that wall, it does cut off any visibility if players from Santos do start to drop that hatch. Heavy presence currently inside of the bakery as Destiny's kind of eyeing up that wall. Could be getting dealt with relatively soon as Hunter is going to be above. We do have a down player on the side of Black Dragons. And
we can catch him
out.
out.
Going to be confirmed now. Hunter! He finds the shot onto the foot of Live, but comes at a little bit of cost. 2 frags go down in favor of Black Dragons as kills continue to trade on through. Now an equal 2 versus 2, and it's, well, a side push that is going to be required. Ion, beautiful crossfire there. Just dipped himself out into that double door and was able to provide some cover.
That's the pain when you struggle with things like vertical pressure, is that even if you get those early advantages, you can secure the kills that put you in a man advantage. If you are left with just 10 seconds at the end to actually execute onto the site and you don't have the direct information as to where your enemies are, you can still end up losing. So Black Dragons, all they had to do was swing at the exact right time, and those players remaining from Santos would get killed, the time would run out, and the defenders take the first round. Kind of painful there if you're Santos, and it was clear that they were really investing in that vertical pressure because there was absolutely none being put onto the bakery, for example. You know, we had Perez, who was playing on the Kaid, just able to walk freely in through bakery, hold small bake, hold down towards Harry Potter, hold down towards Boots, because no one from the attacking team was pressuring there. That's not necessarily something that's wrong. It just means that if you are going to invest in a strategy that ignores that part of the map, you need to make sure that you can do it in a swift enough time. But now this time Black Dragons have decided to defend up on the top floor. They've changed a lot of their defensive lineup. This time we do have some projectile protection in the form of Jaeger, and I think if you did decide to not bring a Jaeger on this floor, I would have a lot of question marks for you, because the chances are there's going to be utility that needs to be protected a lot more than people.
Especially when 4 grenades are being brought by Santos, the Sledge and the Iana. Both bringing 2 apiece. See nade kills and throwables in general just be so prevalent, especially on this top floor. It is enough to warrant bringing both a Jaeger and a Wamai when available, but of course in this instance with the Wamai being banned, you are left with arguably the inferior option in some people's eyes in that Jaeger. Those ADSs are very easy to burn, and really you need both to effectively keep control. Some off angles being held here. Resets is going to be playing on Pixel. It's got a deployable shield and potentially an ADS, but that shield is being pinged out as it's usually a first tick in a box that you want to get as an attacker.
Wonder if they've been able to keep tabs on where these defenders have moved. They do still have at least 1 drone over in Piano, which is where they originally saw Potoxi, but they have, of course, moved since then. Rise sending in the flashes. He'll remove the That was the yokai drone that he got rid of, but Resets is still just peeking out with the other one, providing that information over to the rest of his team.
STK has dropped and is going to deploy the Gon 6 to make their way on through now. Of course, can jump in the Gemini and gather a little bit of intel, but there are going to be some mute jammers that are going to be stopping information from being gathered so freely. Hunter will be able to continue on in for the time being and maybe net himself a nice little frag here. Does toss the nade on through, but unsure if it has landed on his mark. I think the full hit points on the side of Black Dragons would indicate not, but STK looking to try and double down as well. The ADSs are going to be saving. Still a lot of information and a lot of utility to discover here.
Under a minute remaining, though, and all 10 players are still alive. Once again, Santos may find themselves in a position where the time just is ticking beyond the means of anything that they can do with it. I mean, they're still looking for information. STK finally goes down, which is absolutely not going to help their cause. And this time, they didn't even have to worry about significant vertical play. They're just worrying about that top floor, which Black Dragons have barely had to do anything so far to continue to hold on to.
Well, the plant is going to start going down with 9 players alive. Cons, how have you found the space and the time to confirm that? The kills are now going to have to start to fly, but with a player up on the skylight, it's going to be increasingly more difficult here for Black Dragons to do anything about it. Kills continue to flood on in, but you've got to remember, Santos are in the power position here. The skeleton key will not work at close range. It is all going to be down to Hunter. Now, very tricky position. He's got to play this well. May have some information out there that's going to assist him. He's certainly going to be able to get audio cues, but as soon as he peeks, he will be shot at. He's going to try and deal a little bit of chip damage. Gets the all-important down onto resets. We can see that the timer is ticking. And, well, nobody on that defuse means that the round will confirm for Santos here. Hunter going to find that final kill onto resets after he got revived. In an attempt to save KD. Not really sure what was going on there. There was around 6 seconds left at that moment in time. It was all getting a little bit too late.
Messy situation, and it was very risky to essentially rest your entire strategy on the fact that you were going to have a guy available on Skylight, you know. And even though a lot of the other post-plant positions ended up going down, they did feed into the overall benefit of wasting time. Black Dragons focused their kills on those players, which meant the time kept ticking, which meant they weren't going onto the defuse, which meant they weren't paying attention to Hunter up on the Skylight. So yes, it worked in the end, but that's not the kind of strategy that I think that you can repeat multiple times over. So if Black Dragons do decide to go back to the bar site, likely in round number 5, I don't suspect Santos will be able to pull something like that off a second time.
I mean, just the fact that Cons was able to get the plant down was a miracle in itself. Sure, you got a guy holding it on Skylight, and whilst it isn't easy, it is doable, depending, of course, on the plant spot. It was planted perfectly for that kind of a post. The fact that he was able to even get the plant down in the first place was the real impressive thing there, I guess, because there were essentially 4 versus 5 at that point. You've got somebody locked into planting the diffuser as well, so you're essentially then in a 3 versus 5 for a couple of seconds while that goes down, and all the odds just seemingly stack up for Black Dragons. But nonetheless, it is a round that Santos are able to chalk up for themselves. We can now look to see how they want to progress an attack onto this middle floor.
A lot of soft destruction on the side of Santos, which is entirely unsurprising given that the typical way to attack onto this site involves opening up Cocktail above. You take a lot of the vertical control so that you can not only clear out what's beneath, but hold on to control for it for a post plant as well, once you finally have someone putting down the diffuser in the site itself. So having a lot of that, especially given that one of them is a Sophia, you can use her to clear out utility, and then you've got the Yana with the Gon 6 too. In theory, they're very well set up to be able to take this. It's just a question of whether they actually will, whether it's going to be successful, whether they're going to find themselves in just as scrappy gunfights as they have in the previous 2 rounds.
Initially, Santos going to be looking for some sort of an opening pick here, as there's a bit of window play going in, but the main force of pressure is going to be through Red Hatch. a typical place to start your push on Kafe. They're going to look to try and extend a little bit further down. Maybe look to pressure in onto pillars as well, as Hunter is smashing his way over into wheel room. Still utility being played upstairs along with a couple of defenders, so it's not really something that Santos can afford to ignore at this point.
Again, lots of droning, but it'll be Ion to find the first kill onto Hunter. That could hurt them, given that that's your sledge. You want to be relying on him to open up a lot of the floor. They do, of course, still have Rise on Buck, but nonetheless, that's not an opening pick that you were looking for. And I mentioned the droning before, not because it's particularly special that they're droning. I don't know if you know this, but most teams drone. At least they should. But it's just that Santos spend a lot of time doing it, and they never seem to be overly satisfied with the information that they have. They're not fast enough at acting on it. And it has been the cause of a lot of time being wasted. Ion might be able to get a kill here. He does indeed, straight onto Destiny. That's going to significantly weaken Santos even further.
Hans has a chance to respond and will do so. STK picking up a frag as well. Very quickly, things have leveled out, but there's still a top floor presence to be dealing with here. Live going to try and jump his way down as he finds a frag over onto STK. The time to rotate back to site has come. There's all left Rise in quite a difficult spot. 1 versus 3 and already getting pre-fired onto. Will be able to take down Live. Arguably one of the more difficult frags he's going to have to try and get the skeleton key at close range again. This time, he can make it work. He's got 1 second. Pre-fire through the wall. No, doesn't have enough time. Black Dragon's going to win it out there by the skin of the teeth.
Ollie, I am seeing a pattern here. And the pattern is time. It passes.
It ticks down.
Cruelly through the ether. And as a direct result, it causes losses on both sides so far. I would love to get to a round where time is not the reason for one of these teams losing, because it's frustrating to see. Because what ends up happening is, even though you can see what's going on in these teams' minds in the early half of the round, you know, they're thinking about where they want the information to come from. They're setting up their positions. They're trying to preemptively imagine where these players are going to be approaching in from. The problem is because they're not acting fast enough, it doesn't matter how much they try to set themselves up in the first half of the round, because as soon as it gets to the second, they are forced into very aggressive engagements because they simply have no other choice. If they continue to move at the same pace that they have been previously, they're never even going to reach the site. So that's why we're seeing these really messy gunfights that are going both ways. It's very scrappy. It's not necessarily a comment on these players not being good in gunfights. It's a comment on these players being pressured by the mounting force of time itself.
I mean, you've gone with the mountain force of time itself, and it sounds very dramatic.
Yeah,
I'm going to hit it from a slightly different angle and go, well, I'll be honest, I don't think that we really saw Santos all pulling in the same direction there. And it is kind of the same thing, right? Santos ran out of time there because they were trying to do everything at the same time. They were trying to take top floor. They were trying to push through into dining room. That's where Hunter died. They were just trying to tick every box at the same time, and there wasn't enough pencils to go around. They needed to just play a little bit more together, have that cohesive top floor clear, deal with those players like Live, who then come in to get a really important kill in the later part of the round, and just take a step back from it and start from the top. That's the best way really to approach Kafe, and it's the way we see it most commonly approached, is that you've just got to start from the top.
I personally prefer the mounting force of time itself, but sure, whatever, we're entitled to our opinions. Now that Black Dragons have decided to come back to Bar, this is where we're going to have to see Santos essentially be forced into a different strategy to what they did back in round 2. You know, I said they can't rely on playing on the skylight. They can't rely for that really risky plant because Black Dragons will see straight through it. So they're going to have to be more assertive. And Destiny's opening kill onto Ion suggests that maybe that's the way it's going to go.
Quite possibly. It's a big opening frag. It's going to remove a C4 at the least. Of course, pretty handy gun in the Vector. See if it is going to be a difference maker here. That Dragon's really looking to play around his deployable shields as they brought the Goyo and a spare on the Echo. So there's going to be tough locations to try and crack here for Santos. Remember previously when we saw this site, we did see Santos plant when there were 9 players left alive, and just look to try and hold it from the skylight. They could try and do the same again here, but doubt that they're going to get given the same real estate by Black Dragons. Already we can see a yokai drone just rotating back in just to provide a little bit more information.
I like the long angle that Patoxy is holding as well, especially set up with this crossfire from resets. It's going to make it very hard for Santos to move their way on. Although now he's not holding it, maybe it's a potential opening. There's one of the Goyo shields that's been exploded, but STK is still yet to actually take control of Piano itself, and Freezer has not been cleared at all. That gives Resets so much impunity, and he can just bring STK down with it.
Resets barely breaks stride for that frag. We see Perez find one onto Destiny in return. All level at an equal 3 versus 3. A second important frag and a third! 2 kills with the SMG-11, and a bit of a turn and burn isn't something we get gifted every single day. Resets, he's going to finish things off from the freezer, and a night and day difference round there from Black Dragons.
Just completely no attempt to clear him out from where he was. You know, Santos, who have been bringing a lot of projectiles, you would assume that they have the resources that they need to clear out a player who is holding on to Freezer, and it's such a pivotal part of the map. You'll hear a lot about pivotal parts of maps on various maps. You know, Bathroom on Clubhouse is one of them. Usually they are small rooms that are in the center that can prevent you from crossing through into the next part of the map that you need to take control of. So in this case, it would be Freezer. And if you can't clear him out, then he can hold any number of angles onto the routes that you need to take in. You will not be able to move forward without him being gone, unless you fully decide to rotate around, come in through the other side of the map, but that's not really a practical option. So I'm disappointed that Santos didn't do that. I don't know how much protection he had insofar as things like Jaeger ADSs go. Wamai has been banned, so they don't need to worry about Wamai discs. I mean, it's just an echo, man. He's fairly harmless if you can blow him up. Santos doing that could have changed their fate in that round.
Let's see what we end up with in terms of a split here, as Santos have shown us some good things on the attack, but ultimately have lacked that killer instinct and that bite. It would be nice for them to finish here at an equal 3-3 or even a 2-4. We need to see them try and work together here. This looks as though for the time that they're going to be doing just that. We've got a couple of players here up on the roof. If they are going to go for that comprehensive top-down clear, now's the time that they need to be executing that.
Yeah, that's what they really struggle with back on round number 1, is you could tell they were making the effort to actually carry out that clear. It was just so slow. Now, Perez being shot at but not actually killed, that just tells him where at least one of these attackers are. So he can keep an eye on that, especially from the protection of the mirror window. Ion, ooh, okay, doesn't quite get the kill, but he can still hold on to that angle once again, making it so much harder for the attackers of Santos to move through the top floor.
Destiny going to be holding into Cocktail as well, with STK getting himself on the rappel. We could be looking for a little bit of coordination and teamwork here. Ultimately, it's going to be Rise to find the frag. Perez will fall as well, as STK kindly converts that one from one of his teammates. All of a sudden, with a reasonable roam clear completed, you can start to see Santos pressure on down. They've still got a lot of vertical angles to open up. They still have sight to deal with, but at least we know that they're not going to be getting flanked here.
Santos, I hope for their sake that they can take advantage of the space that they've been given by getting themselves those 2 kills. Black Dragons, the remaining 3 players, have convened together down on the bottom floor. So Santos, I don't know if they know that. If they don't have direct proof, they'll probably be assuming it, but they're still going to take the time to ensure that the floor above the site is clear. Now, there's the ping coming out. It's one of those yellow pings, so it could be that Black Dragons are going to get ready to try and throw a projectile up. They have 1 C4 remaining. but that's still going to be in pocket here for resets so far.
Toxie trying to give some pings there based off sound, and well, unfortunately for Black Dragons it is not going to land. There's still some nades that could come on through as well, but you look at the time and you do start to worry. Freezer hatch drop is going to be the order of the day. Well, the diffuser in the hands of Cons. Can he get it down? Can he make this one stick? Certainly looks as though he might. It is a 5 versus 2 resets. Has to try and retake and push back on in, but you can just see how starved of information he really is. Toxie has made a rotation up the red stairs, but from this position, it feels as though this is a round for Santos. And let's be honest, they deserve it. They had a great top floor roam clear. They were able to quickly and effectively take down 2 of the players on the side of Black Dragons. Any kill that Toxie finds here is likely to be impactless.
He's shown himself to be a good gunman as well. Back in stage 1, he got that really nice kill just then onto Rise as well, but being a good gunman doesn't really change the situation you're in right here. Can't even get that last kill onto Hunter, but even if he could have, there were still more players to deal with. There were still no seconds left on the clock. I agree with you, Ollie. It was time that Santos found a successful plan and a round off the back of it, even though it still was tight for time. I think it was about 12 seconds left to go when Cons landed the diffuser. But once you got it down, especially if you can set up for a post plant as effectively as they did, then you should be finding yourself a win. And it makes our scoreline look significantly more even than maybe some of the rounds before would have suggested that it could have been.
Yeah, I mean, Santos now have the chance of a 3-3. And if not, then a 4-2 is probably worthwhile. You know, they haven't played great on a couple of rounds. They've made some huge adjustments there. And it was a pretty much stark contrast with the way that we saw them previously attack onto Kitchen with how we saw them actually going at it there inside of round number 5. If they can make these changes and continue to do so, we've got ourselves a bit of a chance here. Now, last time we saw Santos attack onto these 2 sites, Reading and Dining, we did see again that very split push style, which just wasn't working for them. Hunter got taken out inside of Train as he was pushing in relatively flat and trying to be that sort of disruptor on the site and force some players to move around, maybe get a couple of cheap kills. But he was playing on the sledge and he has the nades. He's got to be in a better position than that. You've got to get him upstairs. You've got to get the most out of that operator out and out of that utility. And I think that if Santos again now go for this top floor roam clear, it's not something that you can avoid doing. You've got to do it at some point, and it's better to try and get it out of the way at the start.
Yeah, I'm certainly intrigued to see if this is going to go differently. Bringing a thermite along this time, which is an interesting choice. You don't see thermite a ton on Kafe Dostoevsky.
Smoke grenade, potentially.
Yeah, I would assume it's something like that. I can't think of any reinforced walls that would be a huge thing unless you're going to go for the Reading reinforced wall. But other than that, nothing that I can specifically think, oh yeah, I would need a thermite for this. But the smoke grenade's certainly useful. I mean, that's why we are seeing him get played a lot more, and Ace has sort of fallen out of favor as time has gone on. It could help them with a drop down into laundry.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, at this point, if you're just looking for smokes, bring a Jackal or bring a Dokkaebi. Bring something like that that's going to give you a little bit more in terms of assisting that roam clear, because when Santos do commit to that roam clear, they get the job done. They usually spend a little bit of time doing it, but when we've seen them do it effectively, it really hasn't cost them all too much. Already we've got players that are going to be looking to try and push through inside of this pillars area and inside of this wheel room, and you do already start to worry that they're just going to try and approach this the same as that we've seen them do previously.
Well, they are just outside that wall that I was talking about, so it could be that they're going to go for that, but they haven't cleared out live from above. If they move away, he could easily get a kill onto them, which he does, straight onto Hunter, and right after the exothermic charge gets deleted by the denial on the other side of the wall. So that plan already straight in the bin, and we're on the final minute of the round.
Destiny will be able to respond, but you wonder how many of these kills can Santos get just challenging horizontally. Defenders have got a lot of land to go at here, and Live already going to look to try and stretch his legs. confirming another couple of kills. All of a sudden, Rise is left in the 1 versus 3, wiggling around either side of the pillar, pre-firing as he goes. Again, Rise in the clutch situation. He was 1 versus 3 last time. Well, now he's got a hell of a lot less health than he did previously. Smoke canister going to cut off the push for now. The diffuser being cold over inside of Dining. It's unlikely that that is really going to be too much of a factor here. Instead, he's just going to be left to try and slow walk his way on through, but he's got 2 angles to check and doesn't know which to go for first. Perez going to find the final frag with the SMG-11. He's already proved himself with that gun earlier on. Well, that is going to be a good 4-2 split for Black Dragons.
We did discuss there was the potential for them to get the 3-3, of course, had they won that round, but a 4-2 is not too bad, considering the fact that you're playing on Kafe Dostoyevsky, you were on the attacking half. So I wouldn't worry too much if I was Santos. This is really the half where you're going to be given the advantage, and going back to their bans they went for, they don't need to worry about a Flores being played against them. So they've set the attack of Black Dragons up for a way that they would personally like it to be and what they find easier to deal with, what they don't want to have to face. Santos going to be playing the shields. Seen some clash he brought out, and I think if I remember correctly, it was Santos who did lean into the shields a little bit more at the end of stage 2, at the end of stage 1, sorry, not stage 2. We haven't got to the end of stage 2 yet. And they did find some success on it. The problem is, I think, really at the very end, it started to get read into a bit more. And again, they needed to just diversify the way that they were playing it, actually be a bit more versatile. And I wonder how Black Dragons will be able to cope with that.
It's always something to try and contend with, isn't it? Clash's shield. And we see Clash be brought, we see Clash be effective, we see Clash be brought and not be effective. And it really does depend on how the team sort of responds to that and how they're going to look to try and assist that Clash in doing whatever it is that the Clash is looking to do. Typically, block off a line of sight, gain a load of information. Just think about this game in particular, and there's so many different options for, you know, being able to gain that information. We've seen a lot of Mirror played so far tonight, and Mirror is another option that you can bring as sort of a pseudo Clash. You get a couple of Mirror windows that you can place on out there. So really does all depend, and especially if a lot of these players get taken out on the roam, which is what we're seeing at the moment from Santos. There's quite a heavy investment into this roam game and into this time burn. Really could leave Cons in a little bit of a sticky situation later on.
It is actually really interesting. Even though we're not seeing a Mirror be played in this round, it is interesting what you say about it. It just suggests that shift in the meta where there are more valuable defender bans that you can do. Now, Santos are being quite disciplined in how they want to return, or rather when they want to return back to the site, which I think is nice to see. They could find themselves getting punished if they all remained on their roam for far too long. So being quite swift in that decision-making, I suspect will help them. It means that Black Dragons still have to spend a bit more time ensuring that the other floors are clear before they can actually come into the engagements with them themselves, by which time not a ton of time is going to be left remaining, and they'll be fighting up against 5 players.
I am going to be looking to try and open up a couple of vertical lines of sight here as well. Hunter has made his way back down to the bakery. Now, I kind of like how we've got Santos playing this. They have lost, or either opened up or lost, the hatch that leads down in from Dining. But playing the Clash in that location and keeping an eye on Freezer from Wedding or VIP, it makes it very easy to get the read on when these players drop, and you can be in a position to really do something about it. It's a position that we often see played by a Smoke. In this case, it's going to be Rise that is going to be adopting that spot. And Cons is essentially there just to say when somebody is dropped. Now the drops come in, and we're going to start to see players move into position. Rise already finding himself a kill. Reset's left desperately to try and throw out some grenades, but some great vertical angles coming in here from Black Dragons. Resets eventually will fall, though, as this roam game hasn't been dealt with the players being allowed to rotate back down onto site. It's just meant there have been too many guns pointed in the right direction. Toxie, nightmare position. 1 versus 3 when there's a Clash on the board. No thanks. Rise, he's going to find the final frag. Santos come out swinging in round number 1.
I appreciate the clash kill onto live. That was nice to see. Always good. It was the exact problem that I predicted could be there for Black Dragons because of the discipline with which Santos managed their rotate back onto the site. It meant that they had to jump down into the jaws of the beast if they were to make an execute. It's not like they could gradually pick people off of the site and weaken the enemy that they had to face. They just had to make a jump in. And there were 20 seconds remaining at the time at which they did decide to do that. So their options were sincerely limited. And then with Rise there, he picks up 3 kills from himself in that entire round, just ready to pick up everything that was coming through the hatch as Black Dragons jumped on down with the support of Cons as well. I said, was that flash play, was the shield play from Santos going to be enough in a similar way to how it turned out to help them along towards the latter half of stage 1? The answer in that case was yes. And I really like that they're not going back to Clash for this round, because what that suggests to me is they don't feel like they have to rely on it.
It just shows that specific use case, and that's exactly what they wanted to use Clash for. It was solely for that freezer hatch, and it worked. And that was the big reason why they were able to win that round, because when the push came through and because of how much time had been wasted and because of the fact that Santos were able to get themselves back down onto site, it made it extremely difficult then for Black Dragons to get something going. Now, they're defending the top floor. Clash is good on the top floor, but it isn't by no means required. We're going to see some opening aggression there as well, which arguably isn't required either, but something going to be resets that suffers. STK put a couple of points of damage down onto him. Both players are going to get away with the lives.
I want to see how the speed of Black Dragons changes here. One of the things I spoke about at the start is that they were kind of infamous for how fast they did everything in the last stage. They've made these changes to their roster, and they certainly have slowed down. I think overall that will probably benefit Black Dragons because it means that they're thinking about things more. It allows resets to get that kill. There you go. You're being careful. You're doing your due diligence, I should say. But it still did put them in a position in that last round where they had not much time left over and they were very slow. Maybe it's a case of getting really comfortable with each other because Perez especially is brand new to this roster. Resets played with them in the Copa do Brazil. So they're still getting used to one another, and maybe that will change and improve as time goes on. I mean, look, Perez, he's finding himself pretty comfortable as it stands, Ollie.
You can't just seem to find one kill, can he, Gio? Usually he finds them in pairs and make it triples. Last time we saw him get a couple, it ended up in being a triple kill, and well, now it looks no different. Cons, big aggression making that run out, but it is but a drop in a very big ocean that is currently dominated by Black Dragons.
There you go, that was nice. No problem with time. They seemed to know what they were doing. They set themselves up positionally a lot better. They were gathering information. This is what I was hoping to see from Black Dragons, where you have that nice middle ground. And as I was talking about, you know, you have these brand new players. Resets is relatively new, came from their academy team. Perez is brand new to the team, but still being able to set up plays like that certainly sets a precedent for things going forward that needs to be good. Now, one of the ways you can think about it is Santos didn't do that great in the BR6 last stage, and they haven't changed anything. So ideally, you want to be beating them at quite a substantial scoreline. If Black Dragons win the next 2 rounds, then great, 7-3, I would say that that's a success. But Santos certainly have been playing in a way that suggests that they could make that far more even. And if you're Black Dragons, you're looking to gain such massive improvements on what happened in the last stage, I don't think you'd be satisfied with that.
There's definitely potential Santos to continue to pick up a couple of rounds here, but I guess the rounds that haven't been too close, there's been sort of glaring holes in Santos's attack or defense, whichever it might be, and Black Dragons kind of look like that team that are on the cusp of just being able to turn it on and be able to consistently come away with these nice clean rounds. They've got to try and find that in themselves and in their play style. Resets has just taken an extra second to get himself on in, as there was a bit of aggression shown earlier. So much so that we're actually getting An air jab placed there on side of Bakery. Double door, that's real belt and braces stuff.
I mean, they've gone to mining, so the first time that we've seen this site played today. And Rise can just pass on this information as to where these players on Repel are, hoping that the rest of his team can use that to their advantage. And if they are still on Repel, then maybe you would expect them to run out from Bakery and catch them off. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that they want to place an air jab there, knowing that that's where the site is and how close proximity they are.
STK, is he going to get himself into an engagement here with Perez? Shots are exchanged. It's enough to force STK to push on down. Rise is going to be underneath with the heartbeat scanner. Going to be able to feed that information on through. 3 C4s on the side of Santos as well, so he can likely ping out locations and his teammates try and work off the back of that intel as well. Perez going quite aggressive here. He's going to be getting himself down those white stairs. There is a push manifesting itself from the wheel room and red stairs side of things. At the moment, we're caught in a little bit of a deadlock.
SDK is being very cautious. I don't know if he knows the Potoxy is up at the top of the stairs right now, but as this drone comes down, he's going to ping out the information, and STK does finally remove the drone. So that should make Black Dragons a bit more blind going down these stairs if he is looking to still push, because they do have to make this swarm in from the sides of the site. And once again, we're in that final minute. There is the pressure.
Regularly, we've seen a lot of players be alive as we enter this final minute. Destiny to be able to finally take down Perez as that top floor push has paid off. Into back with a kill as well, so the advantage firmly in Santos' favour at this moment in time. C4 being prepped on white stairs. Ion left desperately trying to find something with some vertical angles that have been made, but it is not going to be enough. 2 quick kills, however, will be as that levels things back 3-3. The diffuser in the hands of Live, and that will now be going down. Players on Santos are relatively off-site, but the Alder at close range for Cons. Going to net the final 2. Santos hold on. They stave off Black Dragons off of that match point.
I'll be honest, I actually really like the way that Santos set up that defense. Not even that it was necessarily particularly special, but it's like I was talking about before. They had the pulse, which makes it a lot more dangerous to be repelling on the side of the site of mining, but also the way they set up things like the Malusi Banshees over towards reading. Yeah, sure, it makes it hard for the attackers to walk in, but you've got a defender present on the brown stairs, so as soon as they know that utility has been removed, that defender can just pop straight up, get the kill, which we did see happen. Same thing over at the fireplace wall. It makes white stairs very difficult to take for the attackers, because as soon as you drone down it, the defenders know about it. The fireplace wall is soft. They can act on it. You can't just push straight down because you're probably going to be caught out. So even though it wasn't necessarily game-breaking and it wasn't something super new and changes the entire meta or particularly special, it was done well. And at every angle at which Black Dragons tried to approach the site, they found an obstacle that led Santos to that win. And I thought it was very good.
Certainly in with a chance of leveling it all up at 5 apiece here. Santos finding maybe a little bit more success here on the defense than they did on the attack, which wouldn't really be too unusual if we are thinking about how this map of Kafe typically goes. Rise, is he prepping for a little bit of a swamp? It looks like he's just prepping the run out at the moment, or at least giving himself the opportunity for Sound to travel through a little bit nicer. A couple of shots into the barricade, and particularly if you break the glass of the windows, it's going to give you a lot more information as to who's getting on repel, where that repelled player is going to be. Live's going to be getting these hatches open on this top floor. Black Dragons typically going for this top-down approach, as we all know how important these vertical angles can be.
As you say, you know, not only did Santos prevent Black Dragons from meeting their match point, but they get ever closer to evening things out. So there is that extra pressure on Black Dragons from that respect as well. Now, maybe they'll find it easier attacking here onto the reading site because it's a more classically visited site for teams who choose to go to Kafe Dostoyevsky. The nade isn't going to find anyone, but there may have been some utility over at that side of the map that we didn't get to see that it got rid of, potentially a Malusi Banshee. I mean, Santos have decided to bring the Malusi and the Pulse together again. They'll be used slightly differently, though. That Pulse is still going to be down below, I would imagine, alerting any of the defenders to when the attackers are above.
SDK has a ping to work with there. There's going to be plenty more coming out from Rise and that heartbeat scanner. Santos actually got C4 prepped here on White Stairs, but he's maybe going to get droned before he's got a chance to use it, and quite rightly will dip off for the time being. It's a cautious extension and a cautious roam here really from Santos. They haven't fought these positions too heavily. Instead, they've just dropped off back every single time, kept themselves alive, and left themselves in a position to use that utility. Netting themselves a C4 kill over onto live. Going to do something as we enter these final 50 seconds. Ion, he will respond. Destiny on a rotation up brown stairs. Still, with the fact that no real kills were gained for the attackers, they've got to find them now as they push on into sight, and Ion will be able to do so. Perez looking to try and confirm that diffuser. Ion's actually on for a triple kill. Someone needs to try and shut him down before he aces the lot of you. Instead, he's going to have to settle for a quad kill. Perez, he got the plant and the final frag. Well, that enough to put Black Dragons onto a match point.
Yeah, they finally got there, even though round 9 didn't go the way that they wanted. It all comes back to where they want it to be. Now, okay, I guess Santos are going to go to bar. I was about to say, I wonder where it is they're thinking of visiting, because this is an interesting one, because Santos had the option to go back to kitchen, which they won on round 7, but have chosen not to. They lost it. They lost bar on round 8, but have decided that that is where they would like to go. So I would argue that this is something of a risk. Santos, you would assume, have something special planned as a result of this, given that they're not going to the site that served them so much better. Maybe it's because they know that in order to do kitchen, they would have to bring the Clash back out. Maybe they're expecting Black Dragons would be better at adapting. They would be able to overcome the Clash, bring operators and utility that would specifically deal with her, and then they would be far weakened and more likely to give up the site. Whereas this one, perhaps they feel more practiced on it with lots of different options and different strategies, and they can bring something new and something different out.
Quite possibly, I think if Black Dragons were faced with that again, they would probably just play in toward Bakery a little bit more heavily and just try and run Santos a little bit more ragged there with that Clash pick and pay for it. So this top 4 is going to be the chosen location. Early information attempting to be gathered here. It really is difficult round for Santos to try and approach. They haven't had the best of time here on Kafe, and kind of wonder how we ended up here as a map choice for them, given that they do tend to struggle with some of that vertical play. But then on the side of the defense, some of their roaming has been extremely disciplined, Gio.
Well, they're going to have to hope that it continues to be in this round. I say hope as if it's out of their hands. This is entirely within their own control as to whether or not they're going to be able to have a solid roam. Looking like Black Dragons preparing to come in through Skylight. There's the nade down into Backstore. Really nice kill onto Destiny. Just took but a second alive to secure that one. This looks very controlled so far from Black Dragons. They're ensuring that those key areas on the map are being emptied and executed onto. With STK the next one to fall, Black Dragons already find themselves in a 5 versus 3.
Big advantage, and it's already forcing Cons not only out of position, but forcing him to use some of his utility as well as he continually gets pressured. Hunter eventually will find some sort of a response and cause a nade kill over onto live with the downed player dropping the nade, and well, that's exactly really what Santos needed. It puts them in the ascension, it gives them that man advantage. They've now got to try and work with it. Ion, he's been able to recover the diffuser, and you don't have a good idea of where a couple of these players are. Looking to push his way on in, but a bit of a lack of utility at this point. No hard breach remaining. You can see the X-Kairos pellets are sadly undetonated on that freezer wall. Toxic Babe gas going to cut off these white stairs as Ion looks to try and push on through as well. No nades in pocket means he's going to have to try and find these as straight out and out kills. Well, with both players pushing from relatively the same direction, as soon as Santos get the heads up on this, it's going to be very easy to try and shut them down. Ion eventually going to try and change tack, maybe push on in through the freezer. A really important kill there over onto Hunter. Didn't really have too much business grabbing onto that one. Patoxi's going to win his one as well. And it puts Cons in an increasingly more pressurized situation. The plant now going down. Can he hit his shots? Finds the first. Needs to aggress on up. Hits the second. SMG-11 and Cons making it happen there.
Oh my god, at every point in that round, it felt like the turns were tabling, Ollie. You know, Black Dragons looked very strong at the start, then suddenly they only had 2 guys left, and Cons at the end. Super pressurizing. He was ready there with the shotgun just in case they were going to round the corner. You've got to rely on the SMG-11, but every single player who's choosing to play with the SMG-11, you know that they can handle that beast. And he did. Especially when he got the first kill out of the 2 of them, that's the point at which you know it's fine, because his second victim was not exactly in a particularly threatening position. And Black Dragons are going to feel frustrated about the fact they have not yet locked out this game. And going back a couple of rounds ago where I said that if you're Black Dragons, you've made roster changes, you're changing your playstyle, you're going for something very new, you want to be beating one of these bottom of the league table teams quite decisively, especially a team like Santos who hasn't changed their roster. Now, it's clear that Santos have changed their playstyle. It's clear that they've done a lot of scrimming, they've done a lot of practice, because this is not necessarily the Santos that we saw last stage. But with Santos getting ever closer to the scoreline that Black Dragons are at, or the number of rounds that Black Dragons are at, it is a frustrating predicament to know that you have not proved yourself as decisively as you would want to in Playday number 1.
And that's it. If you're going to make changes, you want to come out of the gate and show that those changes have not only worked, but they are making you a better side. And at the minute, we're seeing the changes come through, and we're seeing differences inside of Black Dragon's playstyle, but it isn't as much. It isn't as much teamwork as you would sort of like to see. And obviously that's going to sort of be something that comes with a lot of time, and you're going to have to play together to develop that sort of synergy. In terms of sheer fragging potential, we've got it. You know, Resets and Perez, they've come in as the 2 young gunners. They've got 20 kills between them at the moment, so there's no doubting that ability. It's all going to be about, can they pull together in the same direction to close out this game. Now, we kind of theory crafted, Gio, that if we did see Kitchen again as a site and we did see Clash being brought, that Black Dragons would instead heavily focus on the bakery, and that seems to be what's happening here.
Oh yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Straight away, you can tell the Black Dragons are going for something very different. Not feeding themselves into the machine of the freezer hatch drop, instead coming in from the west side of the map. And you saw them opening up the bakery wall. They've already done the prep wall with the Hibana pellets, but what it means is those angles can be held by the attackers from both of those sections. It makes it much harder for the Clash to hold on to one. You can't protect both lines of sight in one go. And income through the drones as well. And as a Clash, you can't really do anything about those either, because you would have to put down your shield in order to actually shoot them.
Coupled with the vertical angle that Hunter's holding it does make it quite a difficult spot to try and push on into, but Destiny's going to be able to find that opener. Takes down Ion. The vertical angle's paying off as well, as player has just passed underneath Hunter, but he has got a line of sight. It's that horrible situation where you're trying to shoot your own toes off. Eventually, he will find the correct angle. Destiny is going to be down for the time being, but this vertical pressure is just too much, and Black Dragons haven't given it enough attention at all. Patoxy now in a 1 versus 3 quickly makes it that, as it was a 1 versus 4 at the start. Location is going to be known, and again, 1vx, and one of them's a Clash. Not a nice predicament to be in. Hunter, he's going to find the final frag, rotates himself down brown stairs after doing a lot of work upstairs inside a train. We get one round closer to an OT.
This is OT. That's a 6-6, my dude.
Let's get it.
We're in overtime. This is the game that we thought game number 1 was going to be, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. We've made up for it. We sent a message out. We sent a message to Black Dragons Santos and said, look, you know, game 1, it was a bit quick. We need to go a bit. We need a bit more distance. We need a bit more time filled inside of this game. And they've gone, yeah, you know what? Say less.
I'll be honest. You know, even if Black Dragons have not always played the best, and I'm talking about this iteration of Black Dragons, of course, not back like pre-NIP Black Dragons or whatever. Even though this Black Dragons have not always played the best, they always bring out some of the most entertaining games.
It's true.
Like, you always know you're gonna have fun watching a game that Black Dragons are in. And Santos are holding on. They are not gonna go down without a fight. And at this point, we don't even know if they're gonna go down at all.
Well, I think that's the big thing, isn't it? Often when you see teams gain that momentum and get themselves into an overtime, provided that Santos can continue to do so, and I think maybe the biggest talking point here is that they've got on defense first. Like, that's going to be pretty massive for them. Their attacks weren't great. They came out 4-2. On the defense, they've been able to do exactly that. They've been able to come out 4-2 again. This time, the 4 to them. So, for me, you've got to give the advantage here to the team that gets that defender side first.
It's just so interesting to me that Black Dragons know that Santos are very likely going to be coming here. I mean, by this point, they will have thrown it out, of course. They'll know what the site is. But when in the operator pick phase, for example, Santos start on defense. Okay, well, where are they going to go? Probably kitchen. They've done the best there. So why aren't you bringing something that's going to make it easier to push? Like, you've got a Zafir, sure, but like, where's your Ying, for example? A Ying could have been an answer to actually making a Freezer hatch drop work. I'm just not sure they've brought enough to make up for the issues that they've had against this clash.
Let's see if they're able to find any responses here. Something that hurt them significantly in the last round was Hunter. Player that we're getting to see on our screens briefly for a moment there, as he was upstairs holding a line of sight in toward that prep room. He was able to deal a lot of damage, cut off a lot of progress, and gain himself some really important kills from there. That vertical game is something that you just cannot afford to ignore. Oh, STK, you hate to see it. Live was prone a little bit further away from the reinforced wall, and just by the narrowest of margins had a better angle.
It was very risky because you got 3 players out in bakery and you want to try and hold the angle onto one of them. So I suppose I commend the effort, but it just makes me nervous knowing that you're on 6-6. Do you want to be that risky? I don't know. Well, anyway, rip to STK, gone but never forgotten, and he's going to be watching Cons' POV at this point. That's why the little clash symbol is next to him. Black Dragons continuing to do work and opening up these walls, and Cons will, of course, continue to provide information over to the rest of his team, who are all a bit further behind, trying to hold on to the angles that Black Dragons will eventually walk into, and that's what helped them secure the victory of the last round.
You get the feeling that this entire round hinges on Hunter, and as I say that, Hunter gets himself taken on out as Perez finds himself 2 great kills. How is he given the space and time to do that? It's going to almost be a flawless rise. Finds 1, but how many times have we seen this man in a clutch situation here tonight? It's a post-plant situation. Ion has the long angle to be able to pick up that final kill. Finally, Black Dragons get some success inside of the kitchen.
Now, here's my question. If Santos win this next round and we go through to a round 15, where does Santos defend on round 15? Because they just had their ostensibly steadfast defense be picked apart by Black Dragons. We'll have to find out because we don't even know we're going to get there. And Black Dragons looked so much stronger than Santos on the first half of this game when they were on defense, and now they're on defense themselves. Going up to reading? Which one is that? Is that reading and mining? Is it fireplace and mining, or is it reading? I assume that it's reading because it's got literature, which is like literature, right? Yes, I was right.
I honestly thought you were giving us a re. Like a full gamer moment re. Apparently not to be. It does give the advantage here significantly over toward Black Dragons, especially when we think about how this site went way back when Black Dragons were on the defense in the first half of this game. It was a site that Santos refused to clear that top floor. How many times did Live fly over that top rail and grab himself a couple of kills? It just wasn't acceptable how many times the same thing happened. Santos, they need to do something about that here. They can't afford to give Black Dragons all of that time and space to work with. They need to try and deal with that roam game and that top floor control. It's a question that they've posed to Santos multiple times, and that is, have a bit more respect for the vertical. Why isn't it something that you take as good a care of as you could be doing and you should be doing? We really need to see them work that now. I do not want to see Hunter dying inside of either train or dining.
I mean, I don't think they're going to go for the same approach that they did back in round 6, where because of course they brought a thermite that time. They were going for the reading wall. They don't have a thermite this time. They brought a Hibana, and I don't think you would necessarily go for that approach, knowing the differences in those two hard breaches. So I'm hoping that they will follow your humble advice, Ollie. They are droning out that top floor. They can see that there's a lot of utility there. There's a lot of reinforcements. They've got the shields. They know there's going to be players up there. I'm really hoping that they don't ignore it. You actually have 2 in the backstore freezer area. Please kill them.
Get in there and take a gunfight. That looks to be what Destiny's doing. He's just going to wait for the drones to catch him on up. As will be droned out there. Even though the mute jammer's there, you kind of get the inkling that you know at least one person's going to be playing there, and as if a shotgun shooting at the drone isn't going to be enough. Destiny just waiting for a little bit more assistance, looking for some pressure. You could see that come from the form of Cons if he gets himself out there onto the rappel, but for the time being, Perez is just going to be allowed to peek onto that angle, and that's a dangerous player to allow that much space to.
So they took the drone all the way up to his face. That's going to lead Perez to throw out one of the Toxic Babe canisters. Which, by the way, has the sound for that changed?
It feels like it has.
Because I swear it sounds like, you know, when you put something in a frying pan, like some bacon or something, it's like... That's what, yeah, it makes me hungry. Yeah, exactly. Well, there's another Toxic Babe canister. It's going to continue to push STK back, but he's playing it very patiently so far. Santos going for this top 4 clear, but it's taking them so much time. They do get a kill, but it's returned. The backwards and forwards still means we're no closer to knowing if they're going to be able to make it down onto the site.
That pre-play C4 gives me the heebie-jeebies as well. Patoxy is going to be able to take down Hunter in a position to find himself another here. He might be low health, but at this point, he's wasted a ton of time. He's found a couple of kills, and if he can grab a couple more, well, even better. STK eventually one to shut him on down, but the pre-play C4 did come through. STK, a very difficult position. Goes for the drop, cannot land the shots. Black Dragons, they are going to secure a win here.
Oh, that's so painful. He was like a millimeter off as well. He could have taken that into round 15. But regardless, Black Dragons, they finally take the win in overtime. Not what they were looking for, but it's still a win on Playday number 1 nonetheless. That was a battle and a half. Not quite what I was expecting, I'll be totally honest, Ollie, but I think one of the things that we can say about both of these two teams throughout the course of those 14 rounds is we could see their thinking changing. We could see their approaches changing. We could see the adaptation. And even though it was a close game, I'm hoping to see the rewards of that in their future games.
It was nice to see that adaptation, wasn't it? It was nice to see things being constantly changed up. You know, even in that last round, Santos, they pushed that top floor finally. Yeah, it took them a lot of time and they lost a few bodies doing it, but they were able to get that job done. The nice adaptations we saw on the side of Black Dragons were mainly inside of that kitchen attack and how they chose to approach that differently. A couple of rounds, 2 of those rounds then being successful. And it's great to see. You know, I love to watch a team that struggles on a site and really comes up against a bit of a brick wall, or in this case, a clash wall, and is then able to come back from that. And we've got to welcome Resets and Perez to the league as well. 24 kills between both of those guys. It's one way to announce yourselves on your debut.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I am very excited to see how the two teams are going to continue on. You know, both of them didn't get the results they wanted in stage number 1, but let's bring Chunks back in, have a little discussion about it and about how this is gonna set things going forward.
Well, what a way for game number 2 to go. You mentioned it earlier. It felt like game number 1 was going to be the one that went the distance, but I don't think anyone was expecting that one to go to overtime right there.
It was one of those games that I think it always kind of had that potential, and it really depended on the changes that Black Dragons were able to put on through. I gave Black Dragons the advantage as we went into that one. I'd just like to bring that up here for everyone to remember. But on a real note, it was nice to see Santos being able to hang, and it was nice to see them come out and have a really competitive game, which honestly could have gone either way.
Yeah. We have to remember, of course, that this is still just the first Playday, and these are two teams that did struggle to find the results that they wanted in stage 1. So while they will have been scrimming and practicing and strategizing, this is the first day on the field where they can put that into practice. So I think it will still be a few more Playdays before we get to a point that we're actually grasping the full potential of what these teams have to offer this stage.
Yeah, and I think it shows just how much there is to offer, even from the teams that were maybe dark horses coming into this. The teams weren't expecting to be able to scrap it out so heavily, so being able to make changes in kind of the off-season has worked out beautifully for them. And there were just some insane plays that game. The number of times where it came down to a 1v2, 1v3 scenario, I found that so impressive. Gio, I gotta ask, when you're in that situation, when you are the last player left, when there's just a few seconds left, how does that weigh on players?
I mean, usually when I'm the last player left, that's when I know that the game is gonna end. Yeah, I mean, it puts the pressure on you, right? But the whole point of Rainbow Six, and this is what really separates out the good players from the great players, is how much that information is being shared between the players, right? And how much the communications are flowing. You have to be using the drones you have available to you. You have to be using whatever source of information you have. So much of Siege and the time in the round itself is spent setting up the information that you will need later on. So while it can be pressurizing, if you feel like you're on your own, you're not really. Your friends are right beside you because they're providing information to you.
That's one way to think of it, definitely. Now, Ollie, I gotta ask you here, all right? It looked like, and I think you guys mentioned this a couple times during the game, it felt like Santos on the attacking side, they were playing a little bit slow. They were waiting until the last second. Do you think that was the right play for them, or was that what ended up, giving the win over to Black Dragons? Because they did leave it to the last second, and they ended up losing one of the rounds, not based on all the players dying, but purely down to time.
Yeah, I think you've maybe got to give a bit of an honourable nod toward Rise there as well, if we're going to start bringing this sort of topic up. Rise was that last player alive multiple times, whether it be on the attack or whether it be on the defence. Sure, he fulfills that sort of flank watch sort of position, and there's all the best chance that he's going to be one of the last players alive, but he did seem to get caught out in the cold in like a 1v3 or a 1v2 or something like that more often than not in those dying few seconds, in sort of that sub 15 second mark. And it once again comes down to that coordination and that willingness to take control of the map on all 3 levels. And you've got to go for a top-down clear on Kafe, and that wasn't something that we consistently saw Santos doing. That then is what causes them to waste the time. It's not one of those situations where they're all just sat sort of scrolling the phone in the corner. They're still doing things, but it's almost busy doing nothing, busy doing not a lot in the early to mid part of that round, which then really costs them later.
Yeah, it felt like, even though they would be able to execute, they'd have a plan in place. At the last seconds, they tried to use it, and we definitely saw a breach charge at one point try to go through a wall, and it got shot out. It was destroyed at that point. There was nothing else they could do. Do you think that teams that play this late game strategy, Gio, are able to make things like that happen, where you go in, you leave it till the last second, you have a strategy? Or is it one of those where if that strategy fails, you are just too late and you have no opportunity to make it back at that point?
I think for the most part in Siege, it's entirely unviable to just rely on the total end of the round, because so much of Siege, I mean, the first half of the round, you could argue even longer than that, is reliant upon removing utility and actually setting up and execute. it's the end of the round that you're meant to go in for the execute, but if you haven't finished the setup at that point, and that includes getting certain picks like roam clearing, getting one or two who are out elsewhere in the map, if you haven't done that, it's going to make things very, very difficult for you at the end. And especially if you haven't cleared enough of the defensive utility, they have the advantage when you try to push onto their side. So I don't think there should be any team who are kind of characterized by going for this late round play. It simply just isn't viable. I think if you're playing against the top teams in Siege, they are going to outdo you there.
No, well, we're going to see a couple more of the top teams competing in just a couple minutes, but first, we need to take a little bit of a break, get everyone loaded into the server, so we'll be back in just a couple minutes with game number 3 of the evening.